We all know the story. April 30th, 1945. The Red Army is hammering Berlin. Adolf Hitler, cornered in his bunker, dies by suicide. Case closed. But what if that's not the whole story? For decades, rumors of a meticulously planned escape have refused to die. Eyewitness accounts and once secret government files have long painted a different picture, one of a new life in the mountains of South America. And now, as Argentina begins declassifying its own secret files on Nazi fugitives, the whispers are starting again. This is the story of the Argentina File. The official account seems straightforward. In the last days of World War II, with Berlin in ruins, Hitler married Eva Braun in his underground Führer bunker. On the afternoon of April 30th, they committed suicide. Per his orders, their bodies were carried up to the Chancellery Garden, drenched in gasoline, and set ablaze. Key members of his inner circle, later captured and interrogated by the Allies, all told the same story. Soviet soldiers got there first and recovered what little was left. For the world, the tyrant was dead. But almost right away, the story started to get complicated, and the doubts didn't come from conspiracy rags, but from the very top. The confusion started at the Potsdam Conference just a few months later. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin flatly told the American Secretary of State he believed Hitler was alive and had escaped, maybe to Spain or Argentina. Now, whether Stalin actually believed this or was just playing mind games, his statement planted a powerful seed of doubt. The Soviets then spent years muddying the waters, releasing conflicting reports and hiding the evidence they had. This created a vacuum, and a compelling alternative theory rushed in to fill it. Hitler didn't die in Berlin. He pulled off the most audacious disappearing act in history. The biggest hurdle for the official story has always been the lack of a body. Witnesses said the fire left the remains of Hitler and Braun almost unrecognizable. The Soviets claimed to have recovered fragments, but they locked them away in Moscow archives for decades. With no public viewing, not even a clear photo of the remains, speculation had fertile ground to grow. Then, in 2009, that speculation caught fire. A team of American researchers was given rare access to a skull fragment held in Moscow, a piece of bone that the Soviets had long presented as proof Hitler died from a gunshot. But DNA tests revealed a bombshell. The skull belonged to an unknown woman, someone under 40. For a moment, it seemed like the official story had been blown wide open. But it's not that simple. While that skull was a mismatch, the Soviets had also found part of a jawbone. This jawbone had very distinct and unusual dental work, which was positively identified by Hitler's own dental assistants right after the war. Much later, in 2017, French scientists got to study these remains. Their conclusion was blunt. The teeth and jaw were a perfect agreement with Hitler's 1944 dental X-rays. They even found tartar on the teeth that confirmed his vegetarian diet. The lead researcher, Philippe Charlier, said it best. "Our study proves that Hitler died in 1945. There is no possible doubt." For historians, that dental evidence is the final nail in the coffin. But for believers in the escape theory, the early Soviet confusion and the skull blunder are huge red flags, hinting at a cover-up or just epic incompetence. Maybe the most intriguing clues aren't bones, but paper. For years after the war, intelligence agencies like the FBI and CIA were flooded with tips claiming Hitler was alive in South America. Declassified documents are filled with these alleged sightings. One famous FBI file from September 1945 details a report from an informant who claimed Hitler had landed in Argentina by submarine about 2.5 weeks after Berlin fell. The document reads, "By pre-arranged plan with 6 top Argentine officials, safe hiding places had been prepared for Hitler and his party." It describes a clean-shaven Hitler, suffering from asthma and ulcers, living at a remote ranch in the Andes. Now it's critical to understand what these files really mean. Historians point out that agencies had to log these reports, but they almost always found them to be rumors or outright lies. There's no document where the FBI or CIA concludes Hitler actually escaped. Still, the fact that these reports were being filed and taken seriously enough to be documented for at least a decade after the war is, for supporters of the theory, proof that the world's top spies thought his survival was a real possibility. We're going down a pretty deep historical rabbit hole here. If you're finding this as fascinating as we are, take a second to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next investigation. So if Hitler did escape, how? And why Argentina? The how is actually rooted in historical fact. They were called rat lines, secret escape routes that thousands of high-ranking Nazis used to flee Europe. It's undisputed that Argentina, under the very sympathetic eye of President Juan Perón, became a safe haven for some of history's worst war criminals. Men like Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust, and Josef Mengele, the angel of death of Auschwitz, used these rat lines to get to Argentina and live freely for years. The argument is simple. If they could do it, why couldn't their leader? Theories popularized in books like Grey Wolf paint a vivid scene. In the chaos of a falling Berlin, Hitler and a few loyalists slip away, travel to a waiting U-boat, and begin the long voyage to the coast of Patagonia, Argentina. There, protected by a network of sympathizers, he starts a new life. It's a gripping story, but it's one that mainstream historians say has no credible evidence and relies on hearsay. And yet, the local stories persist. There are tales of a reclusive German at the old Hotel Eden in La Falda, a resort known as a hub for Nazi sympathizers. There are whispers about a heavily guarded estate, the Analco House, tucked away in a remote part of Patagonia, supposedly built just for Hitler. Journalist Abel Basti has spent his career collecting these accounts, publishing books full of supposed eyewitnesses who claim they saw Hitler living a quiet life there. These stories are compelling, but they've never been backed up with verifiable proof. The theory got a jolt of new attention when Argentina recently began declassifying thousands of files on the Nazis who fled there. Prompted by organizations like the Simon Wiesenthal Center, this move is expected to reveal more about the networks that allowed men like Eichmann and Mengele to escape. Now, to be clear, no one expects to find a memo titled Hitler's New Address. These files are about other fugitives, but their very existence reinforces the one part of the story that is 100% true. Post-war South America was the perfect place for a monster to disappear. So, where does that leave us? On one hand, you have the official story, backed by multiple eyewitnesses and, most crucially, the conclusive 2017 forensic analysis of Hitler's jawbone. This is the accepted history. On the other, you have this trail of lingering questions. The initial Soviet weirdness, the misidentified skull, the stacks of FBI files, and the undeniable fact that Argentina was a safe harbor for Nazis. You have these detailed, dramatic narratives of escape that, while dismissed by academics, have a life of their own. The declassified Argentina files don't prove Hitler escaped. What they do prove is that for years after 1945, the world was so uncertain of his death that the idea of his survival was a ghost that haunted intelligence agencies. The Argentina file might not prove that Hitler lived on, but it proves the idea of his survival was powerful enough to shape the post-war world. The case is closed, but for some, the questions will never go away. What do you think? Is the official story the whole truth? Or are there still secrets buried in the chaos of 1945? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into history's greatest mysteries.